freaking do it, man. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. My name's Joey. I'm your host. Today, I am joined by a good friend of mine. Actually, one of the first people that I probably actually trained in
Yeah.
basketball when I thought I was a basketball trainer, but didn't really know anything. But we're going to talk to him a little bit about his experience being in a high performance environment with basketball, and then just what he did growing up as a player, but then also what he does as a coach. So I'd like to welcome Logan Ryan, who is a basketball strength and conditioning coach currently in Arizona, working for Phoenix College, community college down there. But what's up, man? How you doing?
What's going on, brother? Appreciate you having me on, man.
Heck yeah. So I know when I was obviously I'm 5 episodes into this, right? And I was like, who can I talk to that can I can have a conversation with, not just like what they did like as a player or as a coach. And I think you were one of the first few people that came to mind, because I'm obviously seeing you on social media too, like with the pro runs down there in Arizona. And part of me just feels really proud, like not necessarily proud, but like I'm happy for you because I've known you for so long. Uh,
Right.
Even going back to the days of Pleasant Hill Rec, like refereeing you in middle school and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, so that's a little bit, just for everybody listening, that's a little bit how we met. So, well, actually, why don't you tell them that so I can stop talking for a little bit?
Well, I was trying to think of that before we got on this call, and I feel like I'm pretty sure the first time I met you was at the Pleasant Hill Rec League when you were reffing me and
Oh,
whatnot.
yeah.
But I one of my favorite memories, man, one of my first memories of training, because only two people have ever really trained me. Well, I guess four people, but really only two people. James Williams was the
Uh,
first one. He did
my
he
boy,
did like
dude.
one or yeah, he did like one or two sessions with me at Valley View on the outside courts.
Okay.
And you were one of the first people. And I remember one of my fondest memories, man, was when we would hop the fence
Oh,
in the
dude.
early morning before school. We would hop the fence to get onto the DVC track. You would put
Oh,
me through
man.
workouts, man. And it was like, I don't even know what we did necessarily, but it was the like, yo, I'm just working right now. Like I'm working harder than somebody right now. And that is something, my work ethic, I feel, has really helped me throughout my career. And I attribute it to stuff like that and people like you who helped push me and put me in positions to have to develop that work ethic.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome too, because I think because I remember going back in those days, it was like, what do you want to do? And you were like, I don't care, man. Like, I'm just trying to do something. It's like, all right, let's just go run stairs. I know athletes do that. Let's go do that.
Yeah.
Uh, Dude, so when you said jump in the fence, I remember one time you had beat me there, because that was what we did, that like what, 5, 6 in the morning, something like
We
that.
did, yeah, way early.
I remember there was one time where it's like I was running a little late, and I went to hop the fence at the top, and I get to the top of the fence and I'm looking down, pitch black. All I can see is like the 1 foot shrubbery. And I was
Yeah.
like, this probably isn't a good idea. And I remember I jumped and I immediately sprained my ankle.
Yeah,
Dude,
I
that was
remember that.
like, I sprained my ankle pretty badly 2years ago, but other than that, that time was probably like the worst one I've ever done. I remember like sitting down there being like, Logan, I can't just go run, dude. Like, I don't remember how I got home. That was a wild time, man. Yeah. Hey, way back, so I think it's all coming full circle now, too. You didn't no, I think that was a little bit past your time, but like even seeing someone like Zion right now at Florida, it's like kind of just bringing like the all the Coles Park, like seeing you all grow up and like doing big things. I think it's fun for me to see because I saw the early stages.
I feel it, man. It's cool because you were, for me, coming as a young Pleasant Hill kid who eventually went to CP. I used to look up to like you and Ryan and Shane and all you guys, man. You guys were so I like idolized you low key as a kid, man. And I'm pretty
Dang,
sure you
man.
guys were one of the last playoff teams before CP went on that really long dry spell
Yeah,
until we had it when Battle was in his second
yeah.
year. And that was just like as a kid, I used to love going to the CP games because it was like, bro, this is so dope. You know what I mean? And
Oh, the games were
it's
lit
cool
back
to
then,
see the
man.
connection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those games were lit back then. Yeah, that was an interesting time. Because I think, yeah, my senior year was between like the 15 years before me and then until Battle got there. So with, I don't know, 20, 25 years, like my senior year was the only playoff appearance in like 25
Mhm.
years. So that was kind of crazy. Uh, but that season, I don't know if you know this, that season actually got me into this field. Uh, because that year, like junior year, shout out Campanelli, like good dude.
Yeah.
My junior year, I knew I wasn't gonna play, so like I did what anybody would do. I'm gonna hustle hard in practice. I'm gonna motivate my dudes. Like I'm gonna do what I have to help the team. Get
Hmm.
voted most inspirational. I was like, yeah, that's me, dude. Like that's who I am. Next
Yeah.
year, I get told like it's like me, Shane, Emwade, and Ryan. And coach was like, "Hey man, I need to start two of you guys. I'm probably gonna start these two because they've earned it." And it was like Mike and Shane or something like that. I was like, "Okay, like I'm about to play some minutes this year, bro. Like hell yeah!" I ended up playing less my senior year than I did my junior year, and then
Hmm.
all of a sudden my mindset flipped. What am I doing wrong? Like, why isn't he playing me? Like, why even bother showing up? Like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Uh, and it didn't really hit me until like I got into sports psychology that I spent the whole year worrying about things outside of my control, which caused me to not enjoy my senior year, which I was playing basketball with my six best friends. We had Oh, there's a thumbs up thing
I
on there.
I know I didn't even do
I
that.
forgot that happens. Playing basketball with my six best friends. We had the school's best season in like 10, 15 years, made playoffs, almost upset Berkeley High,
Berkeley?
number five seed,
Yeah.
almost upset
Hmm.
them. We were winning like halfway through the fourth quarter, but none of that mattered to me. Like I didn't care because I didn't play. So
Right.
like that experience made me realize like I don't want other people to feel that way. Like let's focus on what we can control, you know.
Hmm.
So I'm glad you have fonding memories of that year. I mean I do too when I think about it, like it was fun to be around, being in that environment. But yeah, it's interesting how like things kind of work out, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Got most inspirational again, but then I was like, nah, that just means I cheer a lot and don't play. Complete mindset
Well,
shift.
yeah. Well, like you said, man, the I'm a firm believer everything happens for a reason, And like you
Yeah.
said, like those are the things that got you into the field you're in now, which is
Yeah.
cool. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it probably sucked in the moment, but obviously it paid off in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. So let's get into you a little bit before we talk about like yeah, like you growing up as like an athlete playing high school. Did you play outside of high school?
I did.
You went to DVC for a
Yeah.
little bit, right? Not DVC.
Yeah, I did. I shirted at DVC my
That's right.
first year, and then I went to LMC my second
I
year.
remember the LMC years. Yeah.
I got three
Okay.
games in, tore my ACL, was out that season, rehabbed it, retore it the following preseason, and that was when I got into coaching.
Okay. Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that for sure. But before we get into that, what's something that you're grateful for, like right now in your life?
Man, being alive. On some real, I mean, I so every morning I have a gratitude prayer that I say,
Nice.
and I could run it down, but the gist of it is I try to be grateful for as many things I can in my life, whether that's me being born, for me being who I am, for me waking to live another day, for all my basic needs being met, for my education, both formal and informal,
Yep.
experiences, positive and negative, all the relationships in my life. Like I try to have an attitude of gratitude. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to do that 24/7. I'm human. I'm going to slip up, but
Yeah.
I do try to maintain that attitude of gratitude as much as I can.
How'd you get into that?
That's a really good question, actually. I think part of that is probably my mom. She instilled in me to have really good manners and to be grateful for everything that we
Yeah.
got. I think as I got older, probably part of it was like reading about the neuroscience of gratitude and how it can help flip your mood, and then it obviously can the hormonal effects that can come from it and
Yeah.
kind of have a cascade. So
Yeah.
that's probably part of it as I got older, but I mean, definitely my mom and my sister really instilled that.
Heck yeah. Yeah. And then I think as we age, we gather experience, right? And like maybe we don't take for granted some of those small things, just being able to wake up and just do whatever you want to do, not a lot of people get that choice, so it's like, yeah, there's the chemical physiological aspect of it too, but I think there's also just the life experience part. It's like, oh, it's actually like I get to go to work today and do something I love. Like this is awesome. Also makes like
Right.
the bad things not seem like as bad. They still suck, but like
Not as sucky.
yeah, more manageable. It's like, yeah, it sucks, but like whatever. Like at least
Yeah.
I'm still grateful that I had that opportunity. You know. But I love to hear that, because I think yeah, the more we can just practice that, and again, yeah, to say to do it 24/7, like things happen, man. You know. But yeah, I think the more you can do it, I think you've even seen it in your own life, like just the benefit that it can have, like not just on you, but for other people as well. Hell yeah. So yeah, let's talk about you as an athlete because I completely forgot about the ACL tear.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like? Not just all of it, like the first one, the second one. What was that whole experience like for you?
Yeah, so the first one was obviously tough to have a season-ending injury like that. Um, Especially I was starting to get into a little bit of a role. I had a really tough preseason, and I had finally started to get my life together and was having a good role. And then, that tear happens. And what one of the things that I really remember about that experience of the entire rehab process was number one, I kept on thinking this was before I had even really got into the psychology of things because when I was at LMC, I had to switch majors from kinesiology to psychology. They didn't
Okay.
have kines at the time. So, I was already dabbling a little bit into psychology, but right when that ACL tear happened, I remember just thinking like, dude, you can't afford negative thinking during this. Like,
Yeah.
whatever happens, you have to just focus on this rehab right now and don't let yourself get into this negative cycle.
Yeah.
Um, During that rehab process, it was a from surgery until the second tear, that was like 7 months, but it was, I guess, really like a full year pretty much between the first tear and the second tear. So halfway through my rehab, I had come across this book called The Master Key to Riches by Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
Life-changing book. That's like one of my favorite stories to tell. Life-changing book for me because up until that point, I had never grasped the power of thought. And
Mm.
everything that happened to my life, whether that was my performance on the court, how I did in school, my interactions with friends, social life, etc. It
Yeah.
always seemed like it was completely out of my control. And if things happened and worked well, it was just luck. And if it wasn't, that just was what it was.
Yeah.
And I came across that book and it really instilled in me the power of thought and how your thoughts precede your words, precede your emotions, and therefore your actions, etc. So that for me was one of the most powerful takeaways that I had from that injury. And, even when we talked about gratitude, right? I am very thankful for that injury because of it uh, instilling thought processes like that for me about
Yeah.
valuing thoughts as well as the direction it took me in life. But that's one thing from the first tear. The second tear was like an identity crisis
Oh yeah.
because, I like if I'm introducing, oh, my name's Logan Ryan, I'm a Hooper. You know what I mean? That was how I identified myself. And just like that, that wasn't the case anymore.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a very challenging time because my identity I felt like I had no identity anymore.
Yeah.
And, um, right after the tear happened, I had started dabbling a little bit in coaching with one of my youth coaches in Oakland. And so I had been doing that a little bit. And then after the tear, I pretty much just went right into working with him like all the time.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the transition from that. But um, it was a blessing in disguise, the first and the second tear, because of the things I really took away from each one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit on a couple of things there, right? I think one, there's that misguided notion that, my emotions are causing me to think what I'm thinking in that moment, but yeah, so oftentimes like, yeah, what are we saying to ourselves that's causing me to feel this sort of way, right? But I think another thing you touched on too was like I think that's the challenge with playing a sport or doing something for so long is that you begin to attach like your identity and your self-worth to that thing. So now what happens when that thing gets taken away from you? It's like it can be a very devastating time for a lot of people. I'm sure you sounds like you experienced a little bit, right? It's like,
Mhm.
no, I'm a hooper. I can't do this anymore. Like, what do you mean?
Right.
So how did you work through that? Like being able to separate yourself from like hey, like I'm not a hooper. I'm Logan who also likes to play basketball.
Yeah, I think part of that was I started to dabble in like other interests of mine. I was taking an art class at LMC and I got hella into art. Like I started painting a lot and
Shout
I
out
was
art
not,
class, LMC,
yeah,
man.
right. I wasn't good by any means, but I definitely like it was something I was like, man, I really enjoy just creating stuff from an artistic side.
Yeah.
I have always loved music. I started dabbling with writing more.
Okay.
And then coaching for me, although it was still in basketball, and that was something that was part of the reason why I stayed with coaching or I got into coaching because it kept me connected to basketball. But for me, that was, I think, the beginning of like, okay, you're not a hooper anymore, but what are the things that basketball instilled in you and these coaches who have helped you so much throughout your life, what can you do to pay it forward the way they did for you? And I think that has become a large part of my, I guess, the purpose that I find in coaching is paying it forward. And I've now, there was a period still where I identified myself as a coach and I kind of caught myself doing that and separated it. But um, the I guess bringing it back to your question of like how I worked through it, it was partially just diving into different areas that expanded my horizons.
Yeah, it almost sounds like they were at the time, like maybe in the moment, like almost purposeful, like distractions, but
Hmm.
like it challenged you to open up a different level of like who you are. Yeah, I'm not good at art, but like I'm learning about myself right now, and then just see
Right.
what kind of route that took you down. And I hearing you talk about like paying it forward, going back to what we first started talking about how we met, right? It's like that was the same approach I had with like training you guys. Like I never charged you all money, I didn't really care. Like it was fun for me,
Right.
like I was more into it because you guys were putting in the work, so just kind of seeing that now come full circle where it's like you took on that same approach. It's like, hey, like this is just something I enjoy and like give back to whoever needs it. Who knows like what the people you coach now are going to do 10, 15 years down the road, you know?
Right.
Um, what kind of music were you writing?
It was just bars. It would be like it was
Bro,
little
spin
like
it right
four
now,
bar stuff.
dude. Prove the
Let
bars.
me get freestyle real quick. Nah.
Hey man, goes our us, dude. Shout out goes our us. I know my boys are listening.
Oh my, I'm
Stop,
sorry.
dude. That's not podcast appropriate, I don't think.
Oh my God, you just brought back memories with
Yeah,
that.
dude,
Yo, you
someone
guys had bars. Y'all had bars.
man, we
Y'all
had
had
bars,
bars.
dude. We had bars for a good 2 months. Uh, Mike, I think it was Mike. He sent me some Instagram post because I guess some audio got leaked of Greg Olson when he was at University of Miami,
Uh,
like rapping, and he was like, "Dude, this goes our rest back in there." I was like, "Ah, man, yeah, it sure was."
you guys had that. I don't remember the name of the track, but you had one where it was low key raw. Like, bro, the beat was tough.
Dude,
The rhymes were flowing. It
bro,
was
this might
raw.
turn into a rated R podcast real soon, man. Like we gotta be careful. Uh, so going back to like you said, like going through that ACL tear, like you learned a lot, and that kind of like applied now to your coaching philosophy. But like, what did the game of basketball teach you? I'm sure it was a lot, but like, what are some things you took away from the game that are either bleeding in your life, bleeding in your coaching? Like, what do you think you learned from basketball?
I think the number one, I learned a lot about work ethic.
Mm,
And I think that would honestly, like, I could just stop at that. Like, the work ethic that I have today, something that I often get compliments on, I attribute to what I learned from basketball.
mm.
And that was the stuff I did in basketball, I guess more so when I was a kid, was really just because I loved it. I became a good shooter just because I loved shooting and I hated working on dribbling. So I just
Come
worked
on,
really
man.
hard
You're
at shooting,
talking to me,
right?
baby. Like it's me.
And I just worked really hard at shooting. And as I got older and people like you and other coaches instilling in me this mindset of, dude, there's going to be other people who are working just as there's other people working out here, right? So what is going to
Yeah.
be your leg up on them? So I would say one thing would be my work ethic. Other things would be things like grit, resilience,
Mm.
dedication, and commitment. And then in terms of I categorize them as like performance traits and moral traits, right? Brett
Yeah.
Ledbetter, right? So those are the kind of the performance ones. The moral traits for me are really like the teamwork, camaraderie, loyalty, friendship. A lot of, I'm
Yeah.
basically listing the pyramid of success. Like a lot of
Yeah.
those things are what the game of basketball taught me. And like, yeah, the game taught it to me, but really the coaches I had who were intentional about teaching those things helped me
Mm.
develop those.
Because you played under Battle, right?
I played under Battle. Yep. I played
Uh,
for. Go ahead.
who was after Camp, and then was Battle wasn't the next one after him, was he?
So it was. I think there was Camp had left when you were like after you were there, right? Camp had left. I don't know who came after that, and then Campanelli came back,
Oh, that's right. He
and
did come back.
he was there for I don't remember how many years he was,
Yeah.
um, but he was there. Maybe it was 3 or 4 years or something like that, and then Battle came in.
Uh, I got two questions. I'm asking the first one first because you said the word, of resilience. So like obviously something I talk about with my athletes or even just like, the pilots I work with when I'm doing intro briefs and things like that is like a lot of times you hear a lot of buzzwords from coaches, like gotta be mentally tough, gotta be resilient, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? So like what does resilience mean to you? Like when you say that word, what comes to mind?
Overcoming adversity, or you know, I guess your response to adversity to
Hmm,
overcome it. That for me is what resilience is.
okay. And yeah, you were uh right in the thick of it, back to back ACL tears, so talk about adversity, like how do you get through that? I mean, I don't think you play with him, but Stephen Daly, comes to my mind like same thing. He had multiple ACL tears. Rozelle had multiple ACL tears, right? Like
Right.
that's not a fun experience, So like being tested constantly like that, like you got to have a little bit of something inside you to kind of keep going in those moments. Yeah, maybe it's not with basketball, but uh, with something else. I want to ask you about Coach Battle because I remember he told me this. I don't know how true it was, but like he would have gotten the job my junior senior year had they not had Campanelli not came around. I don't know if that
Yeah.
was true or not. Um,
I've heard that
but
too.
yeah, like again, shout out Campanelli, but like with what I know about Battle, like I wonder how different my junior and senior year would have been if he was at the
Mm.
helm. For those of you who don't know, OG dude, just a grinder, just from the deep south, just like he just loves basketball. What did you learn from Battle in those years you played with him?
Man, everything. I think um, number one, just staying on that topic of resilience, I think that
Yeah.
was my first real basketball experience with adversity and having to
Mm,
overcome it.
okay.
I had a lot of not a boohoo story, but like I had a lot of adversity, I think, growing up, single parent household, food insecurity. When I was like 14, I had a traumatic brain injury from a car
Oh yeah,
accident.
that's
I
right.
had like, I just had these other things that happened, but nothing was like what I experienced with Battle and the adversity he put me through because I had never been challenged the way that he
Yeah.
challenged me. I was very used to when I my freshman year, right? When Campanelli was still there, I played for Coach Jones, and then Campanelli's dad, legendary Lou Campanelli, was our
Oh
assistant
yeah.
coach,
Oh,
right?
that's right.
And
Big
like
Lou.
and Tommaso was our assistant coach,
Oh,
and
dude.
like when all of that was happening before Battle got hired, it was somewhat posed to me that like just you're going to be one of the main guys in this program, right? And then
Yeah.
Battle comes in, completely not the case anymore. It's like, dude, you earn everything you get here. And I
Yeah.
went from starting those first 10 games to like being pretty much benched the rest of my sophomore year. And I almost wanted to quit. Like I was
Yeah.
I was really ready to quit until I kind of had this like, are we allowed to curse or no?
Ah,
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I don't know. Like,
Okay, so I just had this FU attitude towards
yeah.
Battle where it was like, dude, I'm gonna prove you wrong.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you that I can play. But that came out of me from all the challenges that Battle threw my way, whether it was direct or intentional or unintentional. The challenges he threw my way really forced me to have to overcome things that I had not faced before.
Yeah.
And he would say things like, "You got to be mentally tough," right? That was a huge expression of his.
Yeah,
Now, as I'm older, I think resilience is the term I use more, but
yeah.
that's really something he instilled in me.
I mean, he definitely knew how to push people's buttons. That's for sure. Being around enough practices, you could tell when he was like trying to get under somebody's skin. I remember, wait, I think it was my first year coaching JV, uh, under him. One of the freshmen felt like he should be practicing with varsity, so during tryouts he pulled everybody around half court in the big gym, and he was like, "You 1-on-1 against this guy now." They would go like play a three. All right, you against him now, and he just put the dude in the ringer, and he was just getting smoked by like every different level. And he's like, "You want to play varsity? Get in the small gym right now with the freshman." I was like, "Oh," and the kid was good. So like, I mean, I felt like he could have played freshman, but like, I think that was his way of kind of challenging him, being like, "Hey, if you think you can do this, you got to show me. Like, I'm not. I don't give a damn what you say. Like, I need to
Right.
see it." Um, Yeah, that's where I was like, because I think even hearing you talk about that too, I think about my experience is like what would have happened. I think you can learn a lot from like regrets. I have a different take on regrets than most people. I think they can teach you a lot about like who you are, what you value. But I think what would have happened if I would have played that FU mentality to my coach instead of being like, you know, poor me, play me, please. I don't know. We'll never know. Obviously, you don't have a time machine. But like, yeah, you being able to see that challenge, see that adversity, be like, no, dude, like I'm gonna earn this stuff. But then I think now looking back on it, you realize like it probably didn't take you long to realize it, but like not just the message he was saying, but like ultimately how that helped you. You've talked a lot about
Right.
work ethic throughout this whole thing, right? Like, um, and I'm sure it comes from multiple areas, but like more life experiences can just help build those certain characteristics that we possess.
For real. No, I agree. I think battle is I'm very fortunate that I played under a lot of I either played or worked under a lot of
Hmm.
legendary coaches, right? Battle. Um, Coach C at DVC, Dominic Kelly at
Oh yeah.
LMC, who has been doing it Coach C was there for like 30 some odd years. Coach D's probably going on a little over 20 to 25
Yeah,
years
man,
now at
that's,
this
that's
point at
crazy. Like
LMC.
all in one area too, like
Right?
yeah.
Derek Brown. I don't know if you know Derek Brown, right?
I remember
Legendary
him,
like
yeah. He used to come into
bro.
the into In Shape all the time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? So like he was massive on the youth hoop scene, and
Yeah.
Brian Katz at Sac State worked under him. Al Seifert at Christian Brothers. Like I've been very, very fortunate to have been around a lot of very good coaches throughout my career as a player and as a coach. And Coach Battle is by far, in my opinion, the best coach I've ever been around because he has a knack for getting for number one, he has a knack for getting the most out of individuals, and he has a knack for getting a group of individuals to have a team attitude and to it's more than just like all right, we're a group of guys playing basketball. He turns it into like a family unity. Those are like
Yeah.
keywords he always uses, and
Yeah.
very special coach, very special person.
Yeah, he had a way with people for sure. Like, yeah, he knew how to push people's buttons, but he also knew how to like bring everybody together.
Hmm.
Uh, which I always appreciate. Like, I never got to play with him, but I obviously coached under him a little bit, and I remember there was one thing he said that stuck with me. I think we just got blown out. Either my first or second year coaching JV. We just got blown out, and like it was a season. We were good, but like we record stated otherwise. We tried hard, but like we just didn't have the talent skill. So every game was like a blowout if we didn't win by like five. And
Hmm.
I think we were like 5-18 at the time. Just got blown out by like 20, 30. And I'm in the locker room, and I'm kind of standing there, and I'm looking at him, like smiling. I'm talking to him. He's like, "Joey, it don't matter if you win or lose, man. You're still the same happy, energetic guy." And I'm like, Battle, thank you for saying that, man, because like we just got the crap kicked out of us, but I appreciate it. But I think he just had a good read on people,
He
and he would
does.
put them in positions to showcase their skills. And I think for me, like he saw that energetic person in me, and which is why he kind of gave me a head coaching position when he's like, "Hey, man, win or lose, like I just know that you're going to be these kids are going to be in good hands under you. So even
Mhm.
small things like that makes you appreciate him even more. Man, I got to get him on this thing, dude. Like,
You do. Oh man, I would
dude,
listen to that with the quickness.
no shot he knows how to run a Zoom. This
I
might be a phone call interview. I wouldn't
yeah,
put it past him though.
maybe.
Like,
I wouldn't either. I've sent him some stuff on like he knows how to like open up PDFs and stuff, so
okay.
he might be all right with it.
Eh, Corey's got to be around somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, Corey. Uh, so yes, so now you're in this transition of like, yeah, coaching at a collegiate level, right? So what is life like down there for you at Phoenix College?
So it has evolved for me because this is my third year here at
Okay.
Phoenix College. And my first year came in and I was strictly the assistant basketball coach. And I was doing strength and conditioning for men's basketball. That evolved to I started doing strength and conditioning for women's basketball, women's volleyball. The next year, I basically became like the head strength and conditioning coach. The next year, I started
Mm,
doing it for the strength and conditioning for men's and women's basketball, women's volleyball, track and field, a little bit of softball, or I had started to do something with softball. Um, and then I was associate head with men's basketball. And then this past year, I've moved into a different role where I coached about halfway through the season and then did not finish coaching with the men's basketball team, but I now am the director of employee wellness, the
oh hell
fitness
yeah.
center, and strength and conditioning. So I oversee all those things. And
Nice.
my time here has it has been awesome for me because it's given me at the collegiate level different perspectives based on my role. So I look at things. I went from being on the floor, right, as the on floor coach to um, moving up into more of I had a little bit more of a sneak peek at the administrative side, especially because I was teaching some classes, and then now I'm really on the administrative side out of the on the floor, and I miss being on the floor. I actually want to
Yeah.
get back to that more, but it has. I don't know if that answers exactly your question, but that's kind of what my time has been like here.
Okay. I mean, yeah, it seems like not a lot of different hats necessarily, but like moving from one thing to the next, and yeah, I'm
Right.
sure you want to be on the floor more, being in the thick of it, but like obviously someone saw something in you to where it's like, hey, like we feel like you would be a good fit to kind of just run this whole thing, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so how did that role come about? Director of what did you say? Director of human wellness,
Employee wellness,
employee wellness.
the fitness center,
Yeah,
and
how
the
did
strength
that
and
come
conditioning.
about?
Man, so an opening, one the person who was in my role previously, she had left, so there was a vacancy.
Okay.
And all of last year, I had the department that I was working in when it came to physical education classes that I was teaching. Nobody was overseeing that. And therefore, there was no help for me in my role when I was trying to get classes started. So I literally just that's kind of the entrepreneurial side of me. I just made
Hmm.
stuff happen. I recruited kids, or I built relationships with administrators, and I figured out how you create college classes, how you get a
Oh,
syllabus, how you push it through the system, how you get
yeah,
people enrolled. I pretty much did all that on my own, and of course I had people who showed me along the way, but I
yeah.
really was the one who made it happen. And
Oh, damn.
the person who was the department chair at that time, um, I emailed her a lot because it was like, yo, I'm trying to do this. I need your approval so I can do it. And then from there, it just kind of became more of an organic relationship to where she offered me the role.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're doing a good portion of the role already. Let's just make it official at this point.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Uh, I'm sure you get a lot of enjoyment out of that too, just as much as you would like being on the floor coaching.
I do. Yeah, it's completely different in the sense of, or it's not completely different. It's almost coaching in a different way
Yeah.
because now I have, I oversee I think I have 18 part-time employees on my roster, one
Woo!
full-time. Right. I
Look
have a
at
lot
you,
of
man.
people. I have a lot of people who I am making when I make decisions, it impacts them.
Yeah.
And I have two strength and conditioning coaches who are phenomenal. And I am teaching them I'm trying to help them develop their own style of coaching, their own systems, while also teaching them my systems because at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff falls on me. So I need it to
Yeah,
be a certain way, but I also want them to have their own way of doing things. And
yeah,
it's cool because I do enjoy the work that I do with that. But I will say again, I really miss being on the floor and coaching the yeah, it's different from being on the floor and actually coaching with people.
yeah. Uh, so one thing I want to touch on with your coaching, because obviously we're on here with the podcast to talk about like mental skills within, in this case, a performance environment. So as a coach, like what did your time in, well, even like before Phoenix College, but like at Phoenix College, like what did you see from athletes where they may have been a challenge, may have been struggling in terms of like the mentality of their game?
Really good question. And there was some of the things that I noticed between those who succeeded and those who struggled or didn't succeed came down to their mentality. And like the common denominators that I saw were things like number one, of course you have to do the work, right? You have to do those things.
Yeah.
But when it came to their mentality, it would be things like their self-talk. It would be things like their perspective. And when I say perspective, I'm basically talking about like their were they either growth mindset oriented or
Mm,
fixed mindset
yeah.
oriented. And honestly, I can kind of attribute it to those two things, at least from my perspective. Those were
Yeah.
kind of the roots that I saw between those who were successful and those who weren't successful.
What did you do as a coach if you were able to like identify that, right? Like, hey, this kid's self-talk is not where it should be. Like, what did you do as a coach to try to help get them through those moments?
It depended on what environment we were in. So for
Mm.
instance, if we were in a this is you're the professional in this, you're the expert. So maybe I'll learn a little something from you with this,
We'll
but
see.
some of
We'll
the
find out,
research
dude.
but some of the research I had come across had pointed me in the direction that when you're in a practice environment, right, you want to be a little bit more process oriented, or your thinking should be more process oriented around the task that you're doing. Whereas when you're in a game environment, it's more uh, beneficial to think result oriented, but not like I have to get this result, but more so I guess to think optimistically about that result happening. Almost like if you're a shooter and you don't think the next shot is going in, then why are you shooting? Like you
Yeah.
need to think that that next shot is going in and trust your mechanics behind it. So that kind of being so those were things that I would do where I would try to if a player was struggling if we're in practice, I'm trying to bring them back to the process oriented stuff we have. Okay, you're struggling with making your read in the second layer of the defense. Well, we got to look at the low I first to know what our next decision is going to be. Versus if we're in a game and a player is not shooting well, and it's like, dude, like just you got to know that next shot's going in, man. We trust you. We know that you're going to make that. You do it in practice. Shoot that thing with confidence.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, yeah, so yeah, what in practice, outcome is less of a thing, right? Like you still want to be competitive, you still want to do your best, but like that's where you focus on like the nitty-gritty, the form, what I need to do to be successful. So therefore that way, like when you get into the game, you just rely on that process. And yeah, it's not necessarily like you're more outcome focused, but it's like kind of what you talked about. If I miss, how do I make sure I take the next one with the same confidence?
Right.
You know, I will never forget this quote. Dion Waiters said, "I'd rather go 0 for 100 than over 10 because that means you lost confidence."
Mm-hmm.
I said that to my military coach, and he's like, "Boy, you better stop at like 50 at least." But like, yeah. So I think it's not necessarily like, yeah, you go into a game, you want to win, you want to make every shot, yeah, but like not, basing your performance on those things. Was I confident every shot? Did I focus on what I need to do every shot to be successful? If I go 2 for 10, 10 for 10, whatever, like as long as I did put myself in a better position, that's kind of what matters. Uh, Gilbert Arenas talked about this too on his podcast. He said that like because he was talking about taking the emphasis off of outcomes, like specifically being perfect. He was like, "Hey, have you ever had a game going 20 for 20?" No. Have you ever had a game going over 20? No. Well, then why do you worry about if you make or miss every shot? Like
Hmm.
the nature of the game is like you'll go 2 for 20, then the next game you go 12 for 20, then you come back to like 9 for 20, then you go. It's like it's such a bounce back and forth thing. So it's like if you're strictly focused on like what the result is, it's going to be a lot harder for you to either perform your best consistently, I think, or truly get the most out of your abilities. Because if I go out
Hmm.
there and I feel like I have to make every shot, if I miss two, then it's like, well, what are we doing?
Right.
Like, why am
Right.
I
And then
even out
it's
here anymore?
then it's hard to get into a flow state. Right. I think that
Yeah,
that was kind of the gist of why that was my takeaway when it came to the game environment is if we are when you focus on the process oriented stuff, my shooting mechanics, for example, right? That's great, but that doesn't necessarily put you in a flow environment because you're
yeah,
very focused on your internal cues, right? If
yeah,
you focus more on just feeling confident in your shot, right? It's more conducive to flow. That was my takeaway from the things
yeah,
I had.
yeah. Because I think too, you're not gonna. It's a. I don't want to say impossible. But it's gonna be a lot harder for you to make those tweaks to your form in a game.
Right.
It's not going to happen. Like it's not it's structured in the sense, right? It's 5 on 5. There's refs, but it's like you don't know what's going to happen moment to moment. I can't come off a screen, catch it, like, okay, let me wait and go through it. It's like, no, there's a defender right now. So
Right.
like, yeah, I think it's like maybe now it's more using those internal cues as more or less like reminders in a game as opposed to like let
Hmm.
me strictly break down this shot right now because you're right, like in order for me to be into a flow state, like I kind of have to relinquish some sort of control and just let things happen you know um that's always a fun conversation of like getting into flow you know uh whether you experience it or not. People who experience it are like, I don't even know what happened. It's like, well, it's kind of part of it, man. Like
Right. That is it. You just
it's
described
that's kind of it. Like you just gotta go with the flow.
it.
Oh, dang it, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, yeah. So it sounds like really focusing on whatever their dialogue is, whether it's in a game, whether it's in a practice. And I think you touched on it too, like even the ability to have like a growth or a fixed mindset. Like how are you viewing these things that happen to you? How are
Right.
you viewing the fact that you're 0 for 5? How are you viewing the fact that you just missed two free throws with your team down two and 30 seconds left? Uh, yeah, you just got your starting spot taken over by somebody. Like, how do you view that situation? I'm giving you feedback as a coach. Like, how do you interpret this feedback?
Hmm.
That could be the difference between, you maximizing your skill set or you kind of just being okay with where you're at,
Right.
you
No, I agree.
Um,
And it uh, to me, like the attitude of gratitude is one of those things that feeds into it, right? The example of, I missed two free throws and my team's down two with 30 seconds left, right? It's like obviously that sucks in the moment,
sure.
but number one, how are you going to respond on the outs immediately? How will you respond immediately? And then even after the fact, also like I'm sure MJ would probably use some stuff like that as fuel or Kobe, right? So are you also viewing it the same way, like, man, that sucked when I missed it, but I'm thankful I missed it because it fueled me to work even harder or something.
Yeah, and I think both of those two guys talked about that, right? It's like if I miss, it's not like, oh, poor me. It's like, okay, there's an area I got to work on right now.
Right.
You know. And I think too, yeah, like yeah, maybe it does suck in the moment, but guess what? There's still 30 seconds left. Like a lot can happen. We've all seen the
Hmm.
craziness where it's like crazy inbound turnover, or like you just missed two free throws. They can easily do the same thing.
Right.
Um, I used to teach a course where I would give the example of like I was in a game and we were up I think two with like 30 seconds left and I'm on the free throw on the ice of game and I went over two. Like, but I could have thought like my teammates hate me, like we're gonna lose all this stuff. But instead, I was like, no, I'm just get a stop. If we get a stop, all's good.
Right.
Sure enough, we got to stop. So it's like, yeah, it sucks. Like, make your free throws, Joe. But like, next thing,
Right.
figure
Next
it out.
play.
You know.
Hmm.
The last thing I want to get at is because you kind of just touched about this too, but like being in a position where you are in charge of, you know, a handful of individuals, where like the decisions you make directly impact them. So what is it like being in that type of leadership role? How did you develop like those leadership skills that you have?
The leadership skills being like the decision making.
Sure. I mean, yeah, like, well, I guess first question is like, how do you like to lead those individuals too? Where do you think that came from?
I think it came in part from, I guess, how I wanted to be led when
Hmm.
I'm not even gonna say when I was a player, like even now as an adult, a working adult, how do I want the people above me to help lead me, right? So
Yeah.
I would like to think that my leadership style, I hope that my team feels this way, is more um, dude, let's just figure out how to get you better. Like I'm just trying to help you improve because in all likelihood, you're probably not going to be here your entire career. So how can we
Yeah.
get you ready for whatever your next position is so that way you can thrive there? And
Yeah.
that is how I've always wanted to be led is whoever is my leader in a role, are they invested in me as an individual and want the best for me and actually helping me do that? Or are they just viewing me as a cog in a machine and I'm
Yeah.
expendable? And I try to view more of the former than the latter.
Why do you think that's important? Like showing you're invested in their development as opposed to like, hey, we just got to kind of do these things to get them done. So why do you think what sort of role do you think that plays as a leader?
I think it I think it gets the individual to invest more of themselves into whatever it is. So like if you're coming at it selfishly, right? It's like, well, if I want you to do your best, I need you to if I need you to do your best, then I need you to be extremely invested into it because that's going to make me look good, right? That if you have
Yeah.
that selfish approach. But
Yeah.
if you have more of that altruistic, I think approach, it's like, well, like, dude, if you're not enjoying your work, like this is gonna suck. You know,
Yeah.
you're not gonna do good work. It's not gonna be a fun environment for any of us. And if we have to spend all this time here anyway, we might as well enjoy what we're doing and do it really well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, because I can't imagine like you would want to be like a part-time strength and conditioning coach like your whole life. Like maybe if
right,
you're retired, right? Like sure, I got nothing
right.
else to do, but it's like, yeah, if you're coming up in the field like you're young, it's like, yeah, I can't imagine this is what you want to do the whole life. So how can we get you to where you need to be? And I think,
Mhm.
yeah, you like because you think of yourself as like an employee. If I have a leader who's showing investment in me, then at the very least, like I don't want to let that person down. Like I
Right.
know for me, I don't like letting people down. So if like Logan, if you're my boss and you're like, hey man, Joe, like let's how do we get you better? Like what do you need? Like what do we need to do? Like what can I best do to support you? I'm gonna be like, oh shit, like what yeah, let's do it, man. Like I'm gonna now bust my butt for you,
Right.
So I think like yeah, because then I think now how that bleeds over into everybody else. Like they say you
Yeah,
doing that for person A.
it completely has a carryover effect, you know. Like one of the things that in my role, right, one of my roles is overseeing the fitness center. So
Mm,
we are an outward facing fitness center. We have not only employees and students, we also have community members, and we want them
yeah,
to continue to come back. We are not a huge facility. We have a ton of big gyms around us. So our competitive edge is the fact that we are a really tight knit gym
yeah,
and we know all our members by first name. We keep our facility clean, etc. Right? And though the people who are on my team, I want them to feel good because that's going to carry over to our members, and then
yeah.
it's going to help us, and then it's going to affect our bottom line. Yeah, but like, you know, at the end of the day, I want our team to be feeling good and performing
Yeah. I mean, shout out customer service, like people make
good.
fun of it, but it's like, I mean, there is something to being treated well by
Hmm.
somebody, whether it's an employee, whether it's a peer, like whatever it is. Like, yeah, I can go to the nice big fancy gym, but if I'm just treated as like a number versus like if I go over here, like I'm actually gonna enjoy showing up there because Logan's gonna say what's up to me every time. Like maybe we'll go out and get some shots before my workout, like I like that. And people are into that, because I think we're all striving for that connectedness with other people, and this is another opportunity to do it. Um, but hell yeah, man! Like I appreciate you hopping on here. A lot of good nuggets that you talked about that I think translate not just into sports but also in everyday life. But I want to end you with this: like, what is some advice you would have for maybe not just like young hoopers coming up in the game, but I think since you again you're in a position where you lead other people, what is some advice you would have for people trying to, I guess, progress and develop in their specialty? What's a word of advice you would give to them?
Find what you enjoy and find what you are good at, and that middle ground, just invest yourself into it.
Mm,
Invest, find ways to find ways to see as much joy in whatever that middle ground is, so that way when you're doing whatever that is, it doesn't feel like work anymore. It just feels like, man, this is just an activity I really love to
yeah,
do. It just happens to be work, and hopefully there are things, if it's for a profession, hopefully they're high valued,
yeah,
high income earning type of things. But even if it's not, you're just an athlete and you're wanting to maximize your potential, find whatever it is that obviously you enjoy the sport, but what are you good at in the sport? And just invest into that as much as you can.
yeah. Find out what you're good at, find out what you enjoy, and find that common ground so that you just enjoy the heck out of what you're doing. I know
Right.
you've heard hear about a lot too. It's like people who enjoy their job, it doesn't feel like a job to them.
Mhm.
So it sounds like the same thing. Like if you're a hooper, like and you enjoy it, invest in it to where it doesn't feel like it's a grind, but it doesn't feel that way because you're doing something you enjoy. Hell yeah. Uh Logan, where can the people find you?
Easiest way to find me is on Instagram, at Coach Logan Ryan, all one name. You can also find me on YouTube, same thing, at Coach Logan Ryan. Those are the two places I'm probably the most active.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Good follow. Always some good hoop content on there for all you hoopers listening. But yeah, so again, man, I appreciate you hopping on. That's going to do it for another episode of The Mental Breakdown. Available on all podcast platforms, or most of them at least. Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, I think I heard radio too. You can find me on Instagram and YouTube at Velez Mental Performance. This episode will be up probably within the next day or two, and then short clips to follow. But hey, man, I appreciate you as always. And everybody listening, don't forget that today is a great day to make an impact. All right, have a good day, everybody. We'll see you soon.